Welcome back, everybody. So I got a little bit of different setup today. So I'm filming, I have my other video, my other monitor over there. So if you see me looking over that way, I'm just looking at seeing who's joining the this live session. So today I want to talk to you about getting laid off, the risk of getting laid off, and what we can do about that. So basically I've got 10 tips for you on how to avoid, this is weird, I keep looking over there. Sorry about that. 10 tips for avoiding getting laid off, right? And I think that right now this is very timely. It's very timely to be talking about this sort of thing. So I thought that this would be great for people to go through. Some of you may already be laid off, and that's very unfortunate. My next video, I want to talk about what you can do after you've been laid off, the plan you can put together, and what that's going to look like to get back on track as quickly as possible. A lot of people have been laid off, and it's very tragic. And what I'd like to do is help any of you that are going through that or suspect you're about to have that issue. So today I'll be going through 10 things that you can do right away to help avoid getting laid off. But then also these 10 things will position you to be in a spot to get a promotion as well, I believe. Not only do they protect you against the bad, but I think they position you very well for the good as well. So for long term, these 10 things have great value. At the end of this video, I want to give you a bonus point, and call it number 11, I suppose, on what I think the best thing to do is. And it's outside of the 10. It's something that's very simple, but it's what I do on a regular basis. And it's probably the best thing for both protecting myself, but then also getting better positions in the organization and developing those really rich relationships that will help you out later. So that's the intro to that. If you're watching this, you've probably done a keyword search. You're probably looking for information on getting laid off, what to do to protect yourself. There's a lot of concern out there right now around this. And the problem is there's nowhere to run. That's the big thing, right? Everybody is in a position right now where they're trying to mitigate the risk of what's going on globally. So it's a very troublesome time that way. So hopefully this helps you a little bit. We want to avoid getting laid off right now if we can help it, because there is almost nowhere to go, and everybody, it's going to be much more competitive. So we need to be, as individuals, as employees, we need to be more competitive as well. Okay. So the first thing to do is, I think, reassure ourselves that while there's a bunch of things we can do to insulate ourselves, to protect ourselves from risk, keep in mind that layoffs are quite often not personal and are quite often not performance-based. So rather than, we look at when you're actually fired, let's say, which is usually performance-based, even though you may be let go without cause. Quite often it is performance-based, right? So whereas layoffs, they're quite often a reaction that the company will have to a decline in perhaps the market or the company performance, or maybe it's just a division or department that they no longer feel is appropriate for their business strategy. So that's very important for you to know, that it's not necessarily a reflection of your value or of how you were doing or of what your boss thinks of you. So keep that in mind as we're going through these layoffs with different companies, as we're transitioning. And also keep in mind that there's growing support for the situation, and it's often an opportunity for us to realign, to look at other opportunities for our careers. And quite often it results in a completely different opportunity, which makes us even more happy. So it is tragic, and we have to get through the realignment and the reobtainment of money to fund our living, especially if we have a family. That's very important. So I don't underestimate that, and that is a very serious thing that we need to do. But I'm just saying that it's, in the long term, it can work out well for people. So sometimes there's the silver lining there. Okay. So when there's plans of layoffs, what typically happens, just to give you some insight into this, and I've been on all sides of this, so I speak from experience. Quite often the company will get together, and all companies do this. They will sit down and they will take a look at the employee base and they will look at, okay, well, who should we be letting go? Who can we cut? And who do we keep? And there's various questions that they will ask about this. And I think it's important to know and to think about what those questions might be so that you can then think about how it impacts you or reflects on you and what you're contributing, right? You may not be able to avoid this, but I think through these 10 techniques that you definitely can increase your chances of avoiding it, okay? So some questions that management or executives might think about would be, who can we live without? And vice versa, who can we not live without? So if, really taking a look at that, who will cost the most money to exit, right? So because there's usually a cost associated with layoffs. Who can retire early? So sometimes they look at voluntary layoffs. That's I think a very good option sometimes, especially if people are already thinking about it. Who has low performance? So I'm going to speak about performance. It definitely is a factor. If you have poor performance, you're at risk for a whole bunch of different reasons. So you always want to watch your performance, make sure you're getting graded on your performance, make sure you know what your manager thinks about your performance. Another question would be, who doesn't want to be here? So quite often there's that person or those people that you look at and you just get the feeling that they would rather be somewhere else. And in my mind, they're not honoring the contract that we have with our employers, where we should be showing up ready to go. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but there's that. Who's causing issues? So if people are causing issues and there's a history of issues there, I think that would be also a factor that executives might look at. So best not to create issues if you can help it. We're working as a team in these companies, and we want to have good teamwork. So those are some of the questions that I think you can expect executives or management to be thinking about during these times. So something, I just list those off because those are questions that often are in my head if I have to make that sort of decision. So yeah, I thought that might be useful. So let's get into the 10 techniques, and then I'm going to wrap up with my final 11th bonus technique that I live by. So the first one that I have, and these are in no particular order, it's very hard for me to say which would be the most valuable. I think they all fluctuate and they're all really important. So number one is honesty. And that sounds really basic, but when we think about it, especially as managers, and it applies to everybody, but I think managers are quite often in the spotlight quite a bit when it comes to reputation, because they're responsible for managing groups of people. But regardless, honesty is a huge thing. It's part of your reputation. And when we look at honesty, it's very easy to fall into the trap of not being honest 100% of the time. And if you can't say something, that's different than lying about it. You can say, sorry, I'm not at liberty to discuss that, or things like that, to avoid you getting into the lie territory, even if they're white lies. The biggest issue that I see for people is when they make a mistake. And everybody makes a mistake. I make mistakes, you make mistakes. And as we make mistakes, the more important we are in the organization, whether you be a manager or even an executive, when you make mistakes, it's very important to own up to the mistake and admit to making a mistake. It's very humbling, that experience. Most people don't want to do that, and I get it. I don't either. I've made this mistake in my career where I didn't fess up to it. And it was younger, when I was much younger and early in my career, so it was a great learning opportunity for me, and I've seen people do it since then. The risk is if you make a mistake and then you lie about it or you don't admit to it, and when I say don't admit to it, you're not crystal clear when you say, it was my fault, right? That's what you need to do. You need to say, it was my fault. I take full responsibility for it. I will learn from this mistake, and this is what I'm going to do going forward to make sure I don't make that mistake again. That's what we need to be doing. Anything less than that is not good enough as managers and as leaders. So the risk is that you won't do that, and that you'll be found out later that you covered it up or you didn't really fess up to it. And that's what we really need to do, is we need to just take responsibility, take ownership of our mistakes and treat them like opportunities to grow, and show our staff and show everybody else that, look, it's okay to make mistakes, but we have to own it. Because if we don't, now it's a liability that will come back to haunt us at the time you don't want it to. So that's about honesty. It's not that hard, but it's something we naturally don't always want to do, especially when we make mistakes. So think about that. The next one, number 2, is strategic. I have always had problems saying that word, strategic. There it is. That's not bad. I got to really hit those syllables for that word. So what do I mean by being strategic? What I mean is you need to be high value. The higher value you are as an employee, the better off you are for a number of different reasons, and reducing the risk of layoffs, reducing the risk of being in that list is one of them, right? Because you're delivering a lot of value. You're probably somebody that they can't live without. So that's really important. How do we become strategic? Well, we need to take a look at the mission statement of the company. What is the company trying to do? And how does that relate to what you do every day? Is there an alignment there? Is your effort directly contributing to the mission statement of the company? Or maybe it's your department if the company is really big. What you need to do is take a look at your manager's goals for the year. Do you support your manager's goals? So that would be a strategic linkage, because what we want to do is build that linkage all the way up through the company, from you to your manager, to your manager's managers, all the way up to the president of the company, who has the vision of what's desired by the company, where it wants to go in the next year, whether it be, selling so many widgets or earning so much money or whatever it might be. So the closer you are related to that in your goals, in your effort, in your deliverables, the better and more strategic you will be. So if you don't have that already, if that's not already set up, if you can't see that already, book time with your boss. And this alone will score you points and will make you more valuable. By booking time with your boss and saying, hey, I want to increase my value to the company. And one of the ways I see myself doing that is becoming more strategic and supporting you and the company in its mission. I want to make sure that I'm doing that in as many ways as I can. Wow. Like if my employee came to me and said that, whew, man, I would be impressed, right? So I would encourage people to try that and to look at that as one of the 10 techniques to avoid getting laid off. All right. So number 3 in my list here is the big one, is performance. Now, if we're not performing, if we're not doing our job, then, shame on you, because we should be, right? We should be delivering. And that word delivering is my key word here, delivering results. I see a lot of people with a lot of effort, and people are working hard, and they're making good progress. I just hate that phrase, making progress, 99% done, right? So what you want to do is you want to be done. You don't want to be 99% done. You don't want to be working hard, making good progress, almost there, getting there. All those other expressions, some of them escape me now, but you hear them all the time. And you don't want to say those things. What you want to be able to do is provide tangible evidence that you're delivering results. You want to be able to show without a shadow of a doubt your performance. So what I like to show is week over week progress. So if you have a big project, let's say you got to deliver 100 widgets, how many did you deliver this week? That's what I want to see as a manager. Did you get 2 done? Did you get 5 done? And how does that compare to last week? How are you evolving to get better and better? Because that's really what performance is all about, right? Is getting better and better and delivering. So I would look at that. How are you measuring that? Metrics are everything. If you don't measure it, it doesn't exist, right? I mean, and if you measure it, it automatically improves as well, right? That's the old expression. So show some maybe burn down charts week after week of your progress. That's often quite good. Or the percentage that you finish. Don't be 99% week after week. It's got to change, right? You also can't slide your dates. So if you have a deliverable date of, say, end of the month, and you're not going to make it at the end of the month, you're not allowed to just move your date 1 month out, right? That doesn't work. But a lot of people do that. Don't do that, right? Keep your dates, keep your promises, deliver. That's performance. If you have to move your date for whatever reason, and hopefully it's not because of you, then you need to list that. You need to show why it's not going to get done on the date you promised. Keep that date. That date can't change, right? Moving the date out is bad practice. So you keep that original date and you say we're late. That's what you do. Remember, number one, you got to be honest. You can say we're late. You can't say, oh, the date's changed and not show anybody. No, you're late regardless, right? But you can have a get to green plan. You can say, I'm going to get this back on track, and this is how I'm going to do it. And the reason it's off track may or may not be your fault, but people are going to care about how you're going to fix it, right? So you can get back on track. You can recover from that, right? But that's performance. So make sure you're delivering in that area. Number 4 is integrity. And so this is a tricky one because it takes bits of honesty and other areas like that, and they're all combined in your integrity. But for me, when I look at integrity, I'm looking at somebody who, I should have a definition of this here, but I'm looking for somebody who's a team player, who's going to be honest, who's going to work within the bounds of the organization, not commit violations, not cut corners too much to be able to deliver, right? So this is a tricky one. It's a balancing act because as entrepreneurs, we often want to cut corners. We often want to do things differently to get maximum results in the fastest time possible. And that's good. That's great. However, when you're working in a big organization, you have to be very careful how you do that. Entrepreneurs often don't last very long in large organizations because they're viewed as cowboys. Now, that works if you're a startup and it's your own startup. That's fine. However, in an organization that's well established, that has rules and policies and procedures, that will be viewed as being a cowboy and being rogue and being out of bounds. And if you do that too many times, that will be bad, right? And you'll be viewed as having not a very good integrity. So people will no longer trust you. So there's other things, other subtleties to that, right? That are kind of around honesty and things like that. But when people talk about you, they should be saying, yes, that guy, that person has high integrity. If you can have people, if you can be that person with high integrity and all the things that are around it, you'll be viewed very highly. So that and honesty to me are big factors for people, because as soon as you damage those two things, it's really hard to recover from those. So the other ones like performance and things like that, you can recover pretty easily from some of those setbacks. But setbacks in integrity and honesty, once you violate that area with people, it's extremely hard to recover. So treat those two things, number 1 and number 4, as very sensitive areas to be very careful with, okay? So, all right, moving on. Number 5 is likability. Likability is, it's hard for you introverts, I know, but introverts, surprisingly, I find the most likable. It's weird because I think it's extroverts you often view as the car salesman, the guy who comes up, he's like in your face, and that's quite often an extrovert. Actors are quite often extroverts, and so we tend to like actors because they have high charisma. If you don't have high charisma and you're an extrovert, then you're kind of viewed as the used car salesman. And I'm sorry if you're a used car salesman. I actually like used car salesmen because I have a lot of fun with them. But I think some people won't. So if you're an extrovert, I think what you want to work on is your likability. Make sure that as you're in people's face, because you're doing that more, that they're enjoying it as much as you are. I think that would be my recommendation for you. For introverts, realize that people like you, right? Your humble, and your humbleness and your politeness and all those things make you very likable, right? You often have very good ideas and you're often right. You're often not saying it just to be heard. You're often saying it because you're right. So you're very likable. So know that. My recommendation for you would be to simply be able to communicate more and get out more. So these interpersonal skills, right, is what we want to work on. Do people know who you are, right? Do they enjoy talking to you? So we have to get out of the darkness into the light a little bit. When we're in the hallway, we need to be having conversations with people, asking them about their day, caring about people. If you care about somebody in the company, then that's going to be an amazing experience for you, right? Just take interest in people to start, get to know them. And as you get to know them, you'll become friends, and then you'll care about them. And that's going to help you tremendously in so many areas, right? So that likability part of it is really important. If people don't want to work with you, you're not in a good position at all. So this is really important, much more important than people realize, I believe, right? When I work in a few different groups, not in companies, but outside in my first responder area, and there was someone explained to me once, they said, one of the things we look for is somebody we can stand out all night in the rain with, right? So it sounds silly, but that's true. Like, would you want to stand out in the rain? It's already like miserable enough, but would you want to spend that whole experience, that whole evening with somebody that you really don't want to be with? No, you wouldn't. And it's the same thing at work, right? We want to spend our time, because we're spending huge amounts of time at work, right? So we want to make sure that that's as enjoyable as possible. So be likable and you'll go far, believe me. All right, number 6 is all about sponsors and mentors. So sponsors are actually mentors. Let's start with mentors. Mentors are people that you would choose to mentor you, to guide you to become better within the organization. If you don't have a mentor right now, there's no harm in getting one. And I would highly recommend that, especially in this time, in this environment, you get a mentor to help guide you and to help you as we progress, right? Mentors are amazing. Pick your mentor very carefully. I've had great ones and not so great ones. And the not so great ones, it's really hard to say, yeah, I don't want you as my mentor anymore, right? That's an awkward conversation, but good ones are amazing. And so what I would do is just start slow with potential mentors and maybe do it informally to start, and then slowly build up that formality around it until you're meeting on a regular basis, and try to see what you can do for your mentor. It shouldn't be all about you. You want to make sure you're providing value back to help them. So that's a mentor. A sponsor, so a mentor picks you, you pick a mentor, a sponsor picks some even bigger within the organization. So if somebody comes to you, somebody senior, and says, I would like to work with you, they may not even say the word sponsor, but just recognize what it is. If someone senior comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to work with you, you're not in trouble, right? This is the greatest gift that you can probably get within the organization. It's better than a raise, right? It's better than a fancy title. If somebody senior comes to you, some executive especially, and says, I would like to work with you, jump at that. Do whatever they say and however they want it, right? Like, just support them, meet with them, whenever they say, and just embrace that, because that can, it's a great sign. So congratulations if you get that, but it's also a great gift. So congratulations, and look for that opportunity. All right, so number 7 is specialize. Specialize is where you have a unique skill. So remember about those questions that managers and employees will ask when they're preparing to do a layoff. Who can we live without? Who can we not live without? So this is kind of related to that, where you want to become even more valuable to the organization with these specialized skills. Now, I would not recommend that you hoard information, that you don't share, that you don't collaborate. You need to do that. You need to collaborate. You need to share. You need to teach. You need to do all these things, because that will put you in a position of much higher than where you are, right? That moves you up a level within the organization if you start doing those things. However, you can go beyond that and start to research and learn specialized skills that make you much better in that particular area, right? And if you're acting almost as a consultant in that regard, and you're giving guidance to people, and you're able to help them with your specialized skills, that will be great, really good value. So I would look at doing that as well if you can. And I'm being very general there, because every job is going to be slightly different. But if you have some nuances of knowledge that nobody else has, regardless of what you're doing, that's going to help you, right? Because then people will go to you as the expert in that particular area. So becoming an expert in even small little niche areas is going to be beneficial. right? So especially if it's different than what everybody else in your group is doing, eventually that's going to come to you. And that could be things like learning a language, right? Very general, but knowing a language that maybe your customers, but it could be learning a technology that's specific to your work or anything like that. So be creative, right? There's lots of opportunities there. Number 8 is energy. Energy is, and it's not like you got to go drink an energy drink to excel at this, right? Okay, although that might help, right? I drink a lot of coffee, which gives me a little boost, and I'm really careful with my diet. But what I mean by energy is, do you seem happy when you're at work? You should, right? And it's not because you should always be happy. Like I don't really care about your emotional state inside. Okay, I hope it's good. I hope that you got things in check there, and if you don't, I recommend that you get some assistance there, and so that you're feeling satisfied. But we're getting paid by a company to go do work. We're not getting paid to feel good, right, or happy all the time. And we naturally, well, if I am, I apologize, because sometimes I make mistakes, of course. But it's that's the deal here, right? Show up full energy, ready to work. Somebody that people like, somebody who's supportive and helpful, and you'll do really well here, right? If you are going through a hard time, and I've had hard times in my life, quite often there's things like deaths in the family, other traumatic things that will impact your emotional state. So what I would do in those instances is I would go seek consultation with somebody in your HR department and let them know what you're dealing with. And the reason why I would recommend that, and before you do that, think about your HR department. Are they approachable? Is there somebody there that you have a relationship with already that you can feel comfortable talking to? And what does that look like? That's not going to work for everybody. So there are instances where that's not going to be a good idea. But if you think that you could get somebody who would listen to you and it's going to work out okay doing that, I would recommend it. I think I would recommend it more times than I would not, because what it does is it allows them to know why your performance may slip a little bit, why your mind may not be 100% with the task, and why you may not be always smiling, right? Because it's hard to fake happiness if you have something like that going on, right? It's just almost impossible. So people may notice it, they likely will, and if it gets raised up to your boss or to HR, then at least they know the cause, right? So I think that that's a good idea to do. But outside of that, all the small things in your life, maybe you got in a traffic accident a week ago, maybe you got a ticket for speeding, maybe you lost something important to you, whatever. You have to really not let it impact your work any more than you can help, right? Because people don't necessarily want to know about all the bad things in your life. That's why when people ask you, hey, how you doing? They don't want you to tell them all the bad things. They want you to say, great, how are you? Right? That's the response they're looking for. So yeah, so show up, high energy. People are going to like that. People are going to enjoy that. You're going to lift their spirits, because keep in mind, most people are going through some sort of tragedy. If you look around the room, there's probably a bunch of them that are going through some bad times. So your high energy, your positivity is going to help everybody, right? It's hard to do all the time, but we need to focus and always be working on that and trying to be positive and delivering that high energy as best we can. All right, number 9. Number 9 is professionalism. And professionalism is many things, but really trying to add that formality to everything we do and being as professional as we can. And I often get professionalism and politeness mixed up. I think they're very much related, right? For me, professionalism would be a well-run meeting that has an agenda where it's moves along very well. It keeps on point, and people are able to speak, but we move through it efficiently. Professionalism would be running your meetings very effectively like that, keeping on track, not being late, showing up on time, not taking lunches that are too long, having people always know where you are. People are asking you, where you are or what time you show up. That's not a good sign, right? You want everybody to know that you're being professional about all these things. I think also being professional is you want to make sure that you're not mixing up your home life with work life, right? And showing up not as the person you would be necessarily in the pub on a Friday night, right? So you don't want to be swearing, you don't want to be vulgar, you don't want to be even making jokes that people might think are out of what's the word? not appropriate, right? So you want to be careful of that. It's very easy to let that slide a little bit as you get relaxed with people, but it's very important to always make sure that you're as professional as possible, right? So that's number 9. Number 10 is work ethic. Now, work ethic is really how you're doing at work as far as, performance, and a lot of these things mixed together make your work ethic, right? So if you're late to work, too many times, that's poor work ethic. If your lunches are too long, that's poor work ethic. If you're not getting your stuff done on time, that's poor work ethic. If you're not doing what you need to do to meet your deliverables, that's poor work ethic. And that could include working weekends, that could include working evenings, whatever it takes to compete, right? That's work ethic. So when you look at your coworkers, are you doing more or less than them? That's a good measure to look at, right? Especially as we're in times like we are today. So you want to have good work ethic, and if you're not sure, you probably don't have awesome work ethic, right? You want to make sure that you're producing more than most other people, and the way you do that is just by getting it done, right? You want to do what it takes to get your stuff done, and that's really what it boils down to. I used to work with a guy, and he would not leave the office till he got all his stuff done, and that meant he was in the office sometimes until really late at night, and he would work weekends sometimes, and he didn't really know the work that he was doing, so he wasn't skilled in that area, and he knew it, and everybody else knew it, and some people were waiting for him to fail, but he would not allow failure. So he worked crazy hours until he felt comfortable in being able to perform, and then he reduced that as he was able to get his stuff done faster, and so that he became more skilled in that area. So that to me was a good example of amazing work ethic. Can everybody do that? Of course not. If you've got family, that's very difficult. But that's an example of what we're talking about with work ethic. So you want to make sure that you're raising the bar on that all the time, especially as it compares to everybody else. All right, so that's the top 10, or that's the 10 items that you can look at, or behaviors you can look at to reduce your chances of being on the layoff list with your organization. And I think if you excel in those areas, you're actually going to position yourself for a promotion when the time comes. You're going to prepare yourself for that opportunity if you focus on those 10 things. Now, as promised, here's my number 11 bonus behavior that I live by that I think will help everybody else. And it is being supportive. What does that mean? That means when you're looking at other people in the organization, you're actually asking them the question, how can I support you better? How can I help you? Right? Well, why would I do that? And it seems counterintuitive, right? It seems like, well, if I'm helping everybody else all the time, then all my time is going to be spent doing their work or helping them get their work done. Whereas, and I'm not going to have any time to do my work. Well, there is some truth to that, but then it might mean that I have to work weekends and evenings to get my stuff done. However, I found that investment is well worth the extra effort, because what it means to those other people is, oh, okay, well, this guy or girl actually cares about me enough to make sure that I'm going to be successful. What it means to other people is you're a team player, that you're willing to sacrifice some of your personal time to make sure the team is successful. That's huge, right? That's what an organization is. That's what people are looking for, not somebody who's going to be selfish and let other people fail while they're successful. While that may help you directly in the short term, it's not a long-term strategy. And so when people ask for help, or when they accept your help, now you've got to actually contribute and do that and work with them to get it done. And now you're building those bonds of friendship and peer support. So really good idea. A lot of times people will say, no, actually I'm good, but thanks a lot. Don't walk away feeling there's no value there, right? Because now they're aware that you're ready to support them. And so they just have the knowledge that you're there to catch them and to help them and to make sure they're successful. And you may not even spend any energy actually helping them, but I bet they're going to be there for you if you slip, right? So you're investing in the goodwill. And that's what I do as much as I can to my peers, with my reports, with my bosses, with everybody that I can. And I think that's it. To me, that's been the biggest thing that I've done that's made me more valuable to the company, I believe. So try it out. Try just once and see how it works for you. See what happens. And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So that's the top 10, plus the bonus one that I promised. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, please like my video. I really like it when you like it, and it gives me an indication that I'm doing something right with these videos. And if you have comments on what you'd like to see next, the next video will be, I believe, on what to do if you do get laid off, right? That's kind of like the next part of this. And if you want to be, if you want to subscribe to these videos so that you're informed of when there's a new one, hit the little bell icon. I think it's right about there somewhere. Try that. And it's a little bell. Try that. And then you'll be alerted to when I do a new video. So thanks a lot. Hope this helps you, and safe travels.